So generally people see optimism as a temperament, sunny view, and I think there is some of that, and I have a natural amount of it, but over time I've actually become even more optimistic than my general tendency, deliberately. It's like a learned optimism. And I think the reason we should be as optimistic as we can is because it is how we make really good things, good complicated things. So it's hard enough. It's very hard to make good complicated things work because generally there's more ways things can fail than they can succeed. And it's very unlikely that we're going to make something really good that's complicated inadvertently. They're hard to do, so we have to see it and believe that it can be done. And that is where the optimism comes in, is envisioning something and then believing that you could make it real. Because when we look back on history, and that's where a lot of my optimism comes, we realize that most of the things that we have now have been made by people who are optimistically viewing that it was possible to make them and believe that they were going to make them and could imagine them. So I think of it as a work of imagination, where you imagine a good scenario, which is harder to do than imagining a scenario where it fails or collapses. It is much easier to imagine how things break than it is to see how they work. And that's why entrepreneurs and all the others are rightly lauded, because they're going against that grain. It is hard to imagine how you could have this thing that seems like it is improbable. And most things that work are improbable. Complicated things working. So you're against the improbable, and that work of imagining the improbable and having the improbable succeed and believing it can is optimism, which means that the optimists are the ones who shape our future. So I like to give a little story of a car, and you need to have brakes on the car to steer the car. But the engine is actually the more important element. And so there are people and there are organizations and there are methods that are going to be doing the braking. And I think they're essential. I want brakes in the car. But I just feel that the brake can overwhelm and cause stagnation, and that we also want to remember to focus on making the engine even stronger. So I emphasize the engine. I think that's brilliant and right on. But the reality is that we can't be active about everything. We have to select and choose. And so there is a sense in which, okay, there is a greater than zero chance that the Earth could be impacted by an asteroid. And it would be really devastating. One of the most devastating things that could ever happen to this planet, far beyond even climate change. So it's really good that there is now a group of people who are thinking about that. And there's the B1612 Foundation, which is just tracking all the asteroids, B1612, after the Little Prince. And it's a viable thing that they've been behind all the tracking of all the asteroids and upping that. And then recently we just actually sent something that hit the asteroid and deflected it. So it's the first cosmic impact we really had in the cosmos. So it's good that there is a small group of people, but we don't need to have that be our concern for making national policy every year. We're not, that probability is so low that it shouldn't really be a factor in us making our decisions about what we're going to do this year. So that's passive in that sense. I mean, I can be passive about it because there is another group of people that is active.
And you know that a group is
right.
active.
So one of the major things for me was, the more I thought about the future, the more I became interested in history. And the more I read history, the more the reality of progress became. And I think just acknowledging the reality of progress would go a large, huge step in helping our optimism.